They told you silence is power, my friends. They said if you just stay quiet long enough, they'll come running back, confused, guilty, desperate to know what went wrong. But let's face the truth, silence can be a double-edged sword. It can protect your peace, or it can trap you in loneliness. The world made you believe that saying nothing is the highest form of strength. But sometimes silence isn't strength. It's just pain wearing a mask. You think you're holding your ground, but deep down you're wondering, are they thinking about me? Do they miss me now? In the first few days, silence feels powerful. You imagine them scrolling through your profile, waiting for your name to pop up again. You imagine them realizing your worth. But here's the thing, folks. Silence only works when your energy still echoes in their world. When your absence still feels like a missing piece. Stay quiet for too long, and what used to be mystery starts to fade into memory. That's when silence turns dangerous. That's when strength becomes suffering. Think of silence like fire. When it's small, it gives warmth. It lights the way, but if you let it burn too long without direction, it consumes everything. You start questioning yourself. Am I being strong or just scared to speak? Stoicism teaches us something beautiful here. True strength isn't in ignoring your feelings, it's in mastering them. Silence is powerful only when it comes from peace, not pain. When it's a choice, not a cage. I know some of you have been through the storm. You tried your best to be kind, to communicate, to show love, but they took your presence for granted. They thought you'd chase them forever, and now you've pulled back. You've gone quiet. That silence of yours, it's not weakness, it's a reset. It's the moment you stop begging for what already belonged to you, your dignity, your peace, your control. Because when you stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you, that's when you begin to heal. But be careful, my friends. Don't let silence become your prison. Sometimes we hide behind quietness because we're scared that breaking it will prove we still care. But caring isn't the enemy. Attachment is. You can care deeply and still move wisely. You can feel the ache and still walk away with calm steps. That's the essence of real stoicism, not coldness, but clarity. You're not running from emotion, you're learning how to master it. Here's the truth that few will tell you. They do miss you. Maybe not at first, but in time, silence starts whispering your name into their thoughts. Every night when things go quiet, they feel that absence. They replay your words, your laugh, your warmth. That's the part of silence they can't escape. It's your energy, your calm, your control that lingers long after you've gone. You don't need to chase them. Your silence already did the talking. So listen, my friends, don't let silence eat your spirit. Let it refine you. Let it show you how strong you've become, how much peace you can hold without anyone's validation. They will remember you, and when they do, it won't be out of guilt. It'll be because your calm made them realize what chaos they lost. Now, if this message hit something inside you, if your heart whispered, "That's me," then don't just sit there, my friend. Prove to yourself that your silence wasn't wasted. Go down to the comments right now and write, "My silence speaks power." Don't type it for me. Type it for you. Let it be a small rebellion, a declaration that you're no longer chasing, explaining, or shrinking just to be seen. Because when you write it, you're not just joining a conversation, you're claiming your power back. I want you to feel that moment as your fingers move. Every letter is you saying, "I'm done waiting to be understood." That's the power we stand on here, the calm, the control, the quiet confidence that shakes the ground beneath those who once underestimated you. So take that second, my friend, breathe deep, and write it proudly. My silence speaks power. And while you're here, hit that like button, not for me, but as a promise to yourself that you're choosing peace over panic, growth over games. Subscribe if your soul is tired of the noise and ready for clarity, because what's coming next will take this strength you've built and turn it into wisdom. Stay with me. This chapter isn't the end. It's the turning point. Your silence wasn't your weakness, folks. It was your evolution. Number 1. Silence is the echo they can't escape. They say silence is golden, but in truth it's heavier than gold. It doesn't just fill a room, it fills a mind. When you go quiet, it's not just that your voice disappears, it's that your presence lingers like an echo that refuses to fade. Folks, silence is not the absence of sound, it's the presence of truth. And that truth has a strange way of chasing people down long after you've stopped chasing them. The one who once dismissed you starts to hear that echo in every quiet moment. The tone of your laughter, the softness in your words, the calm that used to balance their chaos. They thought your silence meant defeat, but it was the beginning of their reflection. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And that's exactly what your silence does. It forces them to face what they buried. When you stop explaining, defending, or proving your worth, you become the mirror they can't avoid. The stillness you create exposes the noise in their soul. They start replaying old conversations in their mind, searching for where it went wrong. They remember that last look, that final moment when your eyes said what your mouth refused to. That's the power of silence. It speaks directly to their conscience, not their ego. At first, they'll pretend they don't care. They'll post, they'll laugh, they'll distract themselves with noise and people. But silence doesn't compete with attention. It competes with memory. Every night, when the distractions fade, your quiet presence comes back like a ghost in their thoughts. That's when they start asking themselves the questions they avoided. Why do I still think about them? Why do I miss someone I let go of? They'll tell themselves it's just nostalgia, but deep down they know it's guilt. Because your silence holds a mirror to their behavior. It reminds them that they hurt someone who only ever wanted to understand them. Psychologically, silence triggers something called cognitive dissonance, the discomfort that happens when actions and self-image clash. They see themselves as good, kind, and justified. But your quiet absence contradicts that story. You never argued, never begged, never tried to prove them wrong. You simply walked away with grace, and that unsettles them more than anger ever could. Because people can argue with your words, but they can't argue with your peace. You see, silence is a test, not just of their emotions, but of their awareness. Some will crumble under the weight of it, realizing too late that they took something irreplaceable for granted. Others will try to suppress it, to convince themselves you were never that special. But even those attempts at denial are proof of your impact. You can't ignore what never mattered. The mind only obsesses over what once felt like home. Think of silence like standing still in a world addicted to movement. Everyone's talking, posting, performing, but you're centered, you're grounded. That calm drives people crazy because it forces them to confront their own lack of control. When they can't read your thoughts, they start inventing stories to fill the gap. And that's where the echo begins. The questions, the replaying, the wondering if they ever meant as much to you as you did to them. Sometimes people need silence to understand the volume of what they lost. Your absence becomes a teacher. It teaches them how easily connection can vanish when it's taken for granted. It teaches them that peace is not the same as indifference, that love, real love, doesn't chase endlessly. It retreats when it's no longer respected. And for some, that lesson arrives too late. But let's be honest, my friends, it's not easy to stay silent when you still care. The mind plays tricks on you. You wonder if reaching out would fix things, if breaking the silence would bring closure. But remember this, silence is not about ignoring them. It's about respecting yourself. It's not punishment, it's peace. You are not withholding your voice to manipulate them. You're holding your energy to protect it. Because not every battle deserves your presence, and not every person deserves your access twice. If they truly valued you, your silence won't push them away. It will pull them toward realization. The human mind is built to seek patterns, to crave understanding. When they can't understand why you walked away so calmly, they'll chase the answer. They'll revisit every moment in search of what they missed. And what they'll discover is the truth you already knew. Silence isn't weakness. It's power under control. Think about water, my friends. It doesn't fight the stone, it shapes it. Drop by drop, moment by moment, it carves through resistance with patience. That's what your silence does. It's slow, steady, and unstoppable. You don't need to prove your strength. You are proving it just by not reacting. You don't need to show them pain. They will feel it in the absence of your peace. In time, the same silence they mocked becomes the silence they fear. The same quiet they thought was weakness becomes the reminder of your strength. Because deep down, they know that silence like yours doesn't come from indifference. It comes from understanding. You understood that love without respect isn't love, that attention without effort isn't connection. And when you walked away without making noise, you didn't lose them. They lost themselves. So don't let your silence feel like defeat. Let it feel like discipline. The loudest storms calm eventually, and what's left after the chaos fades is stillness. And that's where truth lives. Hold your silence with pride, but never from bitterness. Let it come from the kind of peace that can't be faked or forced. Because in a world where everyone wants to be heard, being at peace in your quiet makes you unforgettable. And if you feel that truth stirring in your chest right now, if you've ever been the one who walked away in silence while they underestimated your worth, then I want you to write in the comments, "My silence echoes power." Say it with conviction, because that echo isn't just in their mind, it's in yours too. Every time you choose calm over chaos, you remind the universe of who you really are. Quiet, strong, unshakable. Number 2. They thought you'd chase forever, but you vanished. There's a quiet kind of arrogance in the way people reject you, my friends. They think your heart is a revolving door, that no matter how hard they push you away, you'll always find your way back. They mistake your patience for permanence, your kindness for dependence. They assume you'll always be there, waiting in the background, ready to explain yourself, ready to forgive, ready to chase. But one day, something in you changes. You stop reaching out. You stop waiting for the apology that never comes. You just vanish, and that's the day their illusion of control collapses. At first, they don't notice. They convince themselves you're just being dramatic, that you'll text again after you've cooled off. But then the hours turn into days, and the silence stretches like a horizon they can't see the end of. That's when the fear sets in. Because for the first time, they realize your attention was never something they were owed. It was something they were privileged to have. And that privilege has been revoked. Carl Jung said, "Until you value yourself, you won't value your time. Until you value your time, you won't do anything with it." That's what happened when you walked away. You started valuing your time, your peace, your energy. Your silence wasn't a reaction. It was a decision. The moment you stopped giving your energy to people who fed off it without gratitude, you created space for healing. Think of it like an emotional detox. You weren't trying to hurt them. You were cleansing your spirit of the toxins their games left behind. When you stop chasing, they start craving, but not because they suddenly discovered your worth, because your absence stripped them of the emotional supply they'd built their comfort on. Your messages were their reassurance. Your empathy was their mirror. They didn't miss you at first. They missed how you made them feel about themselves. You made them feel admired, centered, seen. Now, in your silence, they have to face their own emptiness without your reflection to soften it. And oh, how they'll fight that realization. They'll scroll through your old texts, looking for clues. They'll remember your laughter in moments they thought they'd forgotten. They'll even test your silence, posting things online, trying to provoke a reaction, fishing for any sign that you still care. But you've changed. You're not silent out of bitterness. You're silent out of peace. You no longer need to be understood by people who never tried to understand you. This is the moment when your absence becomes louder than your presence ever was. They replay old arguments differently now. The things you said that once annoyed them suddenly make sense. The warmth they took for granted starts to haunt them in cold moments. Because here's the truth, people only realize the depth of your loyalty after they've drowned in their own ego. And by then, it's too late. You've already learned that your energy is not an unlimited resource. It's funny, isn't it? They thought you'd chase forever. They thought you'd never learn to live without them. But you didn't just learn, you thrived. Your silence became your boundary, your healing, your freedom. And while they were busy trying to replace you, they forgot one simple truth. You can't replace peace once you've tasted it. You stopped looking for closure because you realized closure isn't something they give. It's something you create. So if it hurts right now, remember, this isn't punishment, it's purification. You're not losing them, you're losing the version of yourself that tolerated less than you deserved. Every day you stay silent, you're teaching your heart discipline. You're proving to yourself that your love doesn't need to beg to be valuable. One day, they'll realize the power of that silence. They'll remember that you didn't leave in anger. You just stopped participating in your own mistreatment. That kind of peace leaves a mark. It changes the dynamic forever. Because the moment you vanished, they began to see what your presence truly meant. So breathe, my friend. You did the hardest thing a person can do. You stopped trying to convince someone of your worth. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. You broke the pattern, and in doing so, you became untouchable. And if this message speaks to that quiet strength inside you, write it below as your reminder. My silence is self-respect. Number 3. The psychology of missing someone who's silent. It's strange, isn't it, my friends? The human mind is haunted not by noise, but by silence. When someone stops responding, when the texts go unanswered, the calls go unreturned, our brains go into overdrive, trying to fill in the blanks. We start building stories out of shadows. This is the psychology of missing someone who's gone quiet. It's not about what you said, it's about what you didn't. Because silence, when it comes from someone who once gave warmth, feels like a door that suddenly closed without explanation. Science confirms this. Psychologists have found that the brain hates uncertainty more than it hates rejection. Rejection gives closure. It tells you no, but silence, it leaves you hanging in limbo. It creates mental tension that demands resolution. When you go silent, their mind begins constructing theories to make sense of it. Did they lose interest? Are they talking to someone else? Did I push them too far? The truth doesn't even matter at that point. It's the guessing that drives them mad. And that guessing, that's where your power lies. Carl Jung once wrote that what you resist persists. The more they try to push you out of their thoughts, the more you stick. That's because your silence activates what psychologists call the Zeigarnik effect, the tendency of the human mind to fixate on incomplete situations. Conversations left open, emotions left unexplored, goodbyes that never came. All of it loops in their memory. And every time they try to distract themselves, your absence interrupts their peace like an unfinished melody. They'll check your profile, pretending they're just curious. They'll scroll through old photos or messages just to remember. But really, they're looking for signs. They want to know if you've moved on, if you still care, if they still matter. Silence creates mystery, and mystery breeds obsession. That's why people often find it harder to move on from someone who disappeared gracefully than from someone who ended things loudly. Anger fades, but curiosity lingers. And nothing grips the human mind like not knowing. The less you say, the more they project. They start imagining your life without them. Maybe you're happier now. Maybe you've found peace. Maybe someone else finally sees your worth. Each thought stings because the silence doesn't confirm or deny anything. It leaves them trapped in their own speculation. They wanted control, but silence flipped that balance. Now you hold the mystery and they hold the uncertainty. It's ironic, isn't it? The very person who once told you, "I need space," now feels suffocated by their own thoughts. They wanted distance, and you gave it to them. But space only feels safe when you think someone is waiting at the other end. When that assurance fades, panic takes over. That's when they start realizing they might have been replaced in a story they thought they were writing. You see, silence forces people to confront their ego. It exposes the cracks in their confidence. They thought you'd always be an option, but options don't stay open forever. And when you didn't chase, when you didn't explain, their mind translated your quietness into confidence. That's what stings the most, that you didn't need closure, that you moved on without the drama they expected. Think of silence like a psychological mirror. It reflects everything they've been hiding from themselves, their guilt, their pride, their longing. It all becomes visible in the absence of your voice. Silence doesn't scream. It whispers truths they can't unhear. It tells them they lost someone who once made them feel whole, and now there's no noise loud enough to drown that realization out. And yes, my friends, this is hard for them to admit. They might act unbothered. They might pretend to have moved on. But the truth hides in their patterns. Late-night scrolling, sudden, accidental messages, posts that seem designed just for your eyes. That's not indifference. That's discomfort. That's the weight of your silence pressing on their conscience. So remember this, you don't have to prove that they miss you. Silence already does it for you. It works slowly, quietly, and deeply, reaching places words never could. Every unanswered message, every unspoken thought becomes a thread in their mind they can't untangle. And over time, they'll realize that your silence wasn't emptiness, it was strength. If this resonates with you, if you've ever been the one who stopped chasing and watched their silence turn into someone else's chaos, write this in the comments. My silence haunts their mind. Because it does, my friend. It always does. Number 4. when silence turns from power to poison. Silence can be powerful, my friends, but only when you're the one controlling it. Too much of it, and that same power begins to poison the soil it once protected. The truth is, silence has an expiration date. When used wisely, it commands respect. But when dragged out too long, it can turn into distance, and distance can quietly grow into detachment. You see, silence is meant to reset the balance, not erase the bond. It's a pause, not a permanent ending. And that's where most people lose their way. They confuse healing with hiding. At first, silence works like magic. It draws curiosity. It forces the other person to think, to reflect, to wonder what you're feeling. But if that silence stretches too far, it starts changing shape. What was once mystery begins to look like disinterest. What was once calm starts to feel cold. Humans, by nature, adapt to absence. If they don't hear from you long enough, they begin to adjust to the quiet. That's when silence stops being power and starts becoming closure. Carl Jung taught that what you repress will eventually express itself in uglier ways. That applies here too. If you stay silent out of fear, fear of rejection, fear of losing control, fear of appearing weak, then your silence isn't peace, it's avoidance. And avoidance never leads to growth, it leads to stagnation. Think about it like holding your breath underwater. At first, it feels like control, but eventually it becomes suffocation. You're not calm, you're trapped. The point of silence was never to drown in it. It was to come up stronger once you've learned to breathe on your own again. Some of you may be thinking, but isn't silence strength? Isn't it better to say nothing than say too much? And yes, sometimes it is, but only when it comes from awareness, not fear. True Stoicism isn't about cutting the world off. It's about mastering your emotions so deeply that you choose your words instead of being ruled by them. Silence without awareness is just suppression. It gives the illusion of control but hides a heart that's still hurting. Think of silence as a chess move, not a checkmate. You step back, not to surrender, but to observe, to see the whole board clearly. You study your opponent, not to defeat them, but to understand your next move. Because if you stay frozen too long, you're no longer playing. You're watching the game pass you by. And life, my friends, doesn't reward those who hide in stillness. It rewards those who act from clarity. There's also a kind of pride that can slip into silence if you're not careful. You tell yourself, they know what they did. I'm not reaching out. But sometimes that's just the ego pretending to protect your heart. Pride can turn your healing process into isolation. Stoicism isn't about pretending you don't care. It's about caring from a place of power, not need. The universe doesn't reward bitterness disguised as silence. It rewards peace built from understanding. And here's something many forget. Silence was never meant to be the ending note. It's the pause before the next chapter begins. If you hold it too long, you risk losing the lesson it was meant to teach. Because silence that isn't followed by action, by growth, forgiveness, or forward motion becomes a cage. It's like standing at a closed door forever, hoping someone will open it when you were meant to build a new one for yourself. So yes, use silence, but use it with awareness. Let it teach you when to hold back and when to speak. Let it remind you that peace isn't the absence of communication, it's the presence of understanding. The real strength lies in knowing when your quiet has done its job. There comes a time when breaking the silence doesn't mean weakness, it means evolution. It means you're no longer reacting from pain, you're responding from wisdom. If you've ever stayed quiet for too long, waiting for someone to notice and realized that your silence started hurting you more than it hurt them, remember this: you don't owe the world your words, but you owe yourself your freedom. Silence is a tool, not a tomb. Use it to rebuild, not to retreat. And if this truth resonates with you, take a deep breath right now and remind yourself in the comments, "My silence has purpose." Because it does, my friends. When guided by wisdom, silence heals, but when held by fear, it harms. So, learn the balance. Speak when your voice is calm. Withdraw when your peace is threatened. But never ever let your silence turn into self-erasure. Number 5. They miss the old you, but they can't find that anymore. When people lose someone genuine, someone who cared without conditions, they don't miss you right away. At first, they miss your presence, the comfort of knowing you were there, but as time passes, they start missing something deeper, the version of you they used to know. They replay memories, not because they want to fix things, but because they want to feel what you once gave them: warmth, acceptance, and calm. Yet what they forget, my friends, is that silence changes a person. You can't go through that kind of stillness and come out the same. Silence isn't just space, it's transformation. When you pulled back, you didn't just disappear. You evolved. You stopped over-explaining yourself. You stopped defending your character to people who were committed to misunderstanding it. You stopped chasing conversations that led nowhere. That quiet time alone became your rebirth. You learned that you don't need to fight for peace. You just stop entertaining chaos. Your silence turned from reaction into revelation, and that's something they didn't expect. They thought your silence was temporary, a strategy, not a shift. They thought you'd come back when the emotions cooled. But the truth is, you didn't just cool down, you healed. Carl Jung once said, "What you run from controls you. What you face frees you." And in your silence, you faced yourself. You faced the pain, the confusion, the longing, and you learned to live without their validation. That's why the old version of you, the one who would have texted, pleaded, explained, is gone. That version of you existed in a world where you needed their approval to feel enough. The new you doesn't. That's why when they come back, trying to talk to you like time stood still, they find nothing familiar. The tone of your voice, the light in your eyes, even your energy, everything has shifted. They're speaking to a person they no longer have access to. They start realizing that they didn't just lose your attention, they lost their influence. You're not angry anymore, and that's what unsettles them. Because when you're angry, they can still feel connected. Anger means you still care, still engage. But calm? That's distance. That's control. Your silence now carries an energy they can't manipulate. It's not passive, it's power in motion. This is what truly haunts them. Not that you're gone, but that they can't reach you emotionally anymore. They try their old tricks, the late-night messages, the nostalgic memories, the subtle guilt. But you're no longer playing that game. You've changed frequencies. They're still stuck in the old channel, calling for someone who no longer exists. It's like trying to find a footprint in the sand after the tide has come in. It's gone. You didn't erase yourself. You simply outgrew the version of you that tolerated their inconsistency. That's what silence does. It rewires your sense of worth. You start understanding that you were never hard to love. They were just too small to meet you where you stood. And once you see that truth, there's no going back. They'll miss your patience. They'll miss your warmth. They'll miss how you always reached out first. But what they'll never understand is that your silence wasn't punishment. It was closure. You were teaching them a lesson without words, that peace is sacred, and once lost, it's not easily regained. They'll keep looking for the old you in new people, but they won't find it. Because that version of you existed only for them, and they didn't protect it when they had the chance. The universe doesn't let people return to a version of you they destroyed. It only lets them witness the one they inspired you to become. So when they finally come back, confused by how calm you are, how detached you seem, don't explain. Let your silence be the message. Let it show them that you're not holding grudges, you're holding peace. And if this truth resonates with you, my friends, if you've ever realized that your silence transformed you into someone unrecognizable to those who once took you for granted, write this in the comments. They lost access, not me. Because that's the truth. They didn't lose your love. They lost their privilege to experience it. And that's what they'll miss forever. Number 6. Silence builds mystery, and mystery builds desire. There's an old truth, my friends. Familiarity breeds comfort, but mystery creates obsession. When you go silent, you pull the curtain on a story they thought they could always read. Suddenly, they don't know where you are, who you're with, or what you're thinking. You stop giving them emotional updates, and that right there is what shifts the power. They were used to tracking your moods like a map, your posts, your messages, your tone, your reactions. But now, that emotional GPS is gone. The silence forces them to wander in uncertainty, and that uncertainty starts to eat at their confidence. It's human nature to crave control, to seek predictability. We like to know how others feel about us because it helps us define who we are. But when that feedback disappears, the mind spirals. They start asking questions they never asked before. Did they move on? Are they happier without me? Was I the problem all along? Those questions don't just fade, they multiply. And before they know it, curiosity turns into obsession. Carl Jung once said, "People don't see others as they are. They see them as projections of themselves." That's exactly what happens here. Your silence becomes their projection screen. They start painting pictures of your life based on their own fears and insecurities. They imagine you laughing with someone new, healing without them, rising above what once broke you, and that vision burns deeper than any argument ever could. Because it's not just that they miss you, they miss the control they once had over how you saw them. Silence builds mystery, and mystery ignites desire. Think of it like a locked door at the end of a hallway. The more they can't open it, the more they need to know what's behind it. That's what your absence becomes. A door they keep knocking on in their mind long after they stopped trying in real life. They'll pretend they don't care, but that's the thing about pretending. It takes energy. Indifference doesn't. The fact that they still peek at your profile, still replay your last conversation, still ask about you through others, that's not indifference. That's curiosity turned into craving. You've become their unsolved equation. They can't figure out how you detached so easily, how your silence feels peaceful instead of painful, and that confuses them because they expected you to fall apart. When you didn't, it shattered the illusion of their importance. Now, your quiet confidence has become magnetic. They can't stand not knowing because every unanswered question about you feels like a reminder of their mistake. Psychologically, this is what the mind does when it loses something it can't define. It replays, rewinds, analyzes, and imagines. That's why they'll accidentally come across your page again, why they'll scroll through old photos and stare a bit too long, wondering when everything changed. They'll remember the small details, how your voice sounded when you laughed, how you said their name, how your presence made even silence feel safe. And that's when it hits them. They're haunted not by you, but by who they were when you were around. You've become the unknown they can't solve, and humans crave resolution more than anything. The irony: the more they try to understand you, the further they drift from the version of themselves that once had you. That's how silence works. It's not passive, it's psychological warfare dressed as peace. You didn't have to post. You didn't have to speak. Your absence said everything. They'll call it mystery, but really, it's mastery. You mastered the art of detachment. You became unpredictable in a world addicted to constant validation, and that unpredictability is what makes you unforgettable. They'll search for you in others, hoping to recreate that feeling of mystery and calm, but they won't find it. Because silence isn't something you imitate, it's something you earn through growth. So don't mistake their curiosity for closure, my friends. When they start watching from the shadows, it's not because they've moved on, it's because your silence still speaks louder than their noise. You stopped explaining, and that's what made you unforgettable. And if this truth hits home for you, if you've ever watched someone who once ignored your presence now chase your mystery, write this in the comments. My silence is magnetic, because that's exactly what it is. You've become the riddle they can't solve, the calm they can't replicate, and the mystery they'll never escape. Number 7. When they finally break their own silence. It always happens the same way, my friends. Curiosity wears them down like water shaping stone. At first, they try to act unbothered, pretending your silence doesn't faze them. They distract themselves, surround their loneliness with noise, convince everyone, including themselves, that they've moved on. But silence has a strange gravity. It pulls at the edges of their composure until something cracks, and eventually it does. One night, when the noise fades and the world quiets down, they reach for their phone. Maybe it's a simple message, a casual, "Hey, how have you been?" Maybe it's a song they send by accident, or a nostalgic emoji, just enough to test the waters without admitting they miss you. But make no mistake, behind that message is a confession they'll never say out loud. I couldn't stop thinking about you. Carl Jung once said, "You meet your destiny on the road you take to avoid it." That's what happens here. The harder they tried to escape your memory, the faster they ran into it. Every attempt to replace you only led them back to the echo of your calm. Your silence became the one sound they couldn't silence. It forced them to confront the truth they buried, the truth that your absence wasn't punishment, it was peace. You stopped engaging, and in doing so, you showed them how loud their own emptiness could be. So when they finally break their own silence, it's not bravery, it's surrender. They're not reaching out because they suddenly realized your worth. They're reaching out because they can't bear the weight of the unknown anymore. The mystery, the questions, the lack of closure, it's too much. Their pride loses to their need for reassurance. They want to know if you're still there, if the door is still open, if you still feel something. But you, my friend, are no longer standing where they left you. Now the power shifts. This is where silence transforms from tactic to truth. You're no longer silent to prove a point. You're silent because you found peace in not needing to. Whether you reply or not, your calm speaks louder than their words ever could. That's the paradox they can't understand. Once you've healed, you don't crave their closure. You already gave it to yourself. Their messages no longer shake your balance. They just confirm what you already knew. They were never as detached as they pretended to be. Sometimes you'll feel the temptation to respond, to remind them that you still exist, that you're still human. But remember, responding doesn't mean returning. Silence doesn't always mean ignoring. Sometimes it's listening to your own growth. If you choose to reply, do it from a place of clarity, not curiosity. And if you choose to stay silent, do it from peace, not pride. Stoicism isn't about shutting people out. It's about being so centered that no one else's chaos can pull you off balance. Think of it like standing at the shore, watching a wave roll back in. You've already survived the storm. Now, the water that once tried to drown you returns, calmer, smaller, unsure of how to reach you. That's them. The wave that never expected the tide to change. They're reaching back, but you've already built your peace inland. You can appreciate their return without needing it. Because when you've mastered silence, you don't chase noise, you choose serenity. And that's the beauty of it. You no longer need to teach lessons or prove your worth. Your silence did all the teaching. The same stillness that once felt painful now protects your peace. And even if you never respond, the energy they feel from your calm will say more than any message ever could. You healed without them, and that's what truly broke them. If this truth speaks to the quiet power in your heart, if you've ever seen someone return only to find you've already outgrown the version of yourself they knew, write this in the comments. I mastered silence, not revenge. Because that's what you've done, my friends. You didn't win by ignoring them. You won by becoming untouchable. Number 8. They'll come back, but you won't be the same. And yes, my friends, they always come back. Maybe not right away, maybe not in the way you once imagined, but eventually the silence catches up to them. Time has a way of stripping away distractions, of revealing what noise once hid. When the thrill of attention fades, when the faces blur and the validation dries up, they start remembering. They remember how your presence once steadied their chaos. They remember how your voice could soften their anger. They remember how your energy felt like home. Silence makes them realize something they refused to face before, that not everyone waits forever and not everyone forgives twice. They'll come back, not because you chased, but because you didn't. Your absence became a mirror, showing them the parts of themselves they lost when they lost you. It's not about guilt, it's about gravity. The energy you carried was rare, calm yet powerful, loving yet disciplined. They thought it would always orbit around them, but when you stopped revolving, they lost their center. That's when regret starts whispering louder than pride. Carl Jung once said, "People don't see what you are, they see what you make them feel." That's why they'll come back. You made them feel safe in a world full of uncertainty. You gave them something no one else could replicate. A peace that didn't demand, a connection that didn't chase. But here's the twist. By the time they return, the version of you they knew no longer exists. Silence has reshaped you. It stripped away your need for validation. It taught you how to be whole on your own. You no longer crave closure because silence already gave it to you. And that's what truly breaks them. They come back expecting the same softness, the same comfort, the same familiar warmth. But when they reach out, they're met with calm detachment instead of open arms. You're not angry. You're simply beyond it. Your silence turned your pain into perspective. You no longer need to be understood to feel at peace. You've learned the art of letting go without resentment. It's a strange thing for them to experience, this new version of you. You're polite but distant, kind but unavailable. The conversations that once flowed with emotion now end in stillness. They sense it instantly. The emotional door they used to walk through is no longer open. It's not that you've changed into someone cold, it's that you've evolved into someone selective. You now know that not every apology deserves access, and not every return deserves welcome. That's the irony of silence. It gives you everything they once tried to withhold: peace, control, and clarity. You no longer look back wondering why, because the distance answered it for you. You start realizing that they weren't your loss. You were theirs. They might have been the lesson, but you were the awakening. And by the time they finally understand what they threw away, you're already living the life they once distracted you from. People always come back to what feels real. And you were real. Your love, your care, your loyalty, all genuine. But real things are also rare, and rare things are not replaced. That's why no matter who they meet, no matter how far they go, something will always feel incomplete. That's not revenge, that's energy. The universe has a quiet way of returning the lesson to those who didn't learn it when they had the chance. So if you're watching this and wondering whether they still miss you, yes, they do. They think about you when the night gets quiet, when no one else feels real, when they realize that attention doesn't equal connection. They replay the moments you tried to save them from their own patterns, and they finally understand. You weren't trying to control them, you were trying to love them. But you're not that person anymore. Silence changed you, molded you, freed you, and now they're standing in the same place where they left you, still expecting you to return. But you've already moved on. You're walking lighter, standing taller, glowing quieter. So let them come back, but don't lose yourself trying to be who you were. Let them see the evolution. Let them realize that silence wasn't your punishment. It was your transformation. And if this truth feels like your story, write in the comments: "Silence made me stronger." Because it did, my friends. You didn't just survive the silence, you became its lesson. And that, my friends, brings us full circle. Silence isn't about ignoring someone, it's about rediscovering yourself. You've learned that peace speaks louder than words, and walking away doesn't mean losing, it means leading. So the next time someone doubts your worth, let your calm be the reminder they can't forget. If this message spoke to your soul, hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and make sure to subscribe for more wisdom and truth every week. Until next time, stay grounded, stay silent, and remember, your peace is your power.